When the Emperor died, the light of mankind faltered, a sun extinguished by the very brilliance that once gave us purpose. I stood upon the shattered bones of his palace, where marble had turned to ash and faith had burned to smoke. Around me, the sky itself bled fire, the air was thick with sorrow, the scent of burnt devotion clinging to every stone. I heard prayers crumble into screams, and screams dissolve into silence, a silence heavier than any war. Yet even in that ruin, something endured. Amid the smoke, a child moved, face pale with ash, clutching a relic as though it held the memory of God. I watched that fragile spark against the dying light and felt something I dared not name. Not hope, perhaps defiance. The Imperium was breaking, yes, but it still breathed, and I swore upon the Emperor's ashes I would bear witness to every wound until either it ended or I did. Amid the collapse of spires and the cries of the dying, I found her, Seraya, one of the Emperor's own daughters of battle. The city burned, faith itself seemed to bleed into the smoke, yet she stood unmoved. Her voice rose above the ruin, not as a warrior's command, but as a hymn of defiance. Around her, civilians gathered, hollow-eyed, trembling, clinging to the sound of her conviction. She gave them something no priest or preacher ever could, the will to stand when hope itself was ash. Her armor was cracked, purity seals torn and blackened, her bolter near dry, but her spirit burned with the fury of a sun refusing to die. In that moment, I saw truth. The Imperium's strength was never the Emperor's throne, nor his armies, but souls like hers. Unyielding, faith forged in pain. Watching her, I, Thalric, skeptic and judge, felt the faint, dangerous pull of belief. The forges of the Mechanicus roared like dying gods in their final breath. Among the shrieking servitors and rivers of molten light stood Varnak, the tech priest whose prayers were written in sparks and circuits. Each movement of his metal hands was both a plea and a command, a hymn sung to machines older than memory. I had come seeking knowledge, truth perhaps, yet what I found was obsession painted as faith. Varnak whispered binary litanies to awaken constructs that should have slept until the stars themselves dimmed. The air pulsed with the heartbeat of reborn engines, every rhythm both sacred and profane. Watching him, I could not tell who was master, the man or the machine. Which of us, I wondered, still served the Emperor's dream? The one of flesh who mourned him, or the priest who forged new gods from his ashes? As the thunder of pistons rose, I felt Mars itself tremble, in awe or in fear. Whispers travel faster than faith, and in this age, both are currency. I followed one into the war council of the fleet, expecting rumor, and found poison dressed as prophecy. Malcor stood before the officers, his words silk and smoke, speaking not of rebellion, but of liberation, of freedom from the corpse throne's decay. His voice was gentle, almost tender, a lullaby for men who had forgotten the sound of certainty. I watched Kale's jaw tighten, his knuckles whitening on the edge of the hollow table as conviction gave way to doubt. Words, I realized, are deadlier than blades, and this creature wielded them with divine precision. I felt it too, that subtle pull at the mind's edge, that honeyed promise of peace through surrender. It was beautiful in the way rot is beautiful when it glistens. I turned away before it took root. Chaos does not demand worship. It merely waits for hope to die. Above Terra, the fleets hung in silent orbit, broken constellations held together by fear, duty, and the ghost of unity. Admiral Kyle stood at the command dais, the flickering glow of tactical hollows painting his face in shifting light. His voice carried the strength of command, but I heard the hesitation behind each word. The admirals around him spoke of loyalty, of sacrifice, yet their eyes betrayed calculation. Trust was a relic now, like the Emperor's own image, polished and fading. Kyle's hands trembled only once, but in that instant I saw the war within him, faith battling reason, honor wrestling survival. Outside, the void mirrored them, vast, beautiful, fractured beyond repair. I almost pitied him, this man built for order while standing at the edge of ruin. But pity is weakness, and in our age, weakness is how chaos whispers its first word. In the streets of terror, even the air seemed to mourn, thick with ash, heavy with silence. The great spires had fallen, and where choirs once sang hymns to eternity, only the crackle of dying fires remained. I walked through it all, past the ruins of faith and empire, until I found the child. Small, trembling, their face streaked with soot and tears, clutching a relic that still shimmered faintly through the dust. Its light was weak, uncertain. Yet somehow, it endured when everything else had perished. For a long while, I could not speak. I was no longer the Inquisitor then, only a man staring at the last ember of a dying age. The Emperor's shadow loomed over all, but in that fragile glow, I saw something he had never truly given us: the will to hope without command. Perhaps it was courage, perhaps only defiance. But in those eyes, I saw the faintest proof that humanity still remembered how to dream. The deeper I ventured into terror's underbelly, the more alive the silence became. A suffocating hum that pressed against the mind. The walls bled secrets, the stones themselves seemed to weep with memory. That was where I found him. Malkor. No monster of the warp, not yet, but a man already halfway gone, his soul traded for the illusion of freedom. His voice was calm, too calm, each word soaked in heresy, yet carried with the grace of a sermon. He spoke of liberation, of rebirth beyond the Emperor's corpse. Lies wrapped in poetry, designed to sound like revelation. I had heard it all before. Every corruption begins the same way, truth spoken just a shade too sweetly. My finger found the trigger before reason dared intervene. When the shot faded, his smile lingered, serene, forgiving. And in that crimson light, I finally understood. This galaxy does not drown in war, but in faith corrupted into worship of the self. Once, the cathedral had sung with choirs, 1,000 voices lifting praise into the stars. Now, its arches howled with war. Soraya stood at the altar, her armor shattered, her banner aflame, yet her will unbroken. Every bolt she fired was a verse, every cry a litany against the dark. I fought beside her, plasma pistols searing judgment into the air, the scent of ozone and blood merging like incense. Across the smoke stood Malkor, smiling, a priest of ruin feeding upon the chaos he had birthed. Around us, stained glass shattered into rainbows of fire, painting our defiance in divine mockery. Amid that storm, a strange calm found me. Not mercy, not rage, but conviction. The truth demanded it. No hesitation, no forgiveness. Faith and doubt collided as steel and flame, and when the heretic fell, his laughter lingered, echoing longer than the silence that followed. When the rift tore open, the air itself screamed like a dying god. The ground split, bleeding light no mortal should ever witness. a brilliance that burned thought to ash. Malkor danced within the storm, his laughter rising above the thunder, mocking creation with every motion. Soraya fought below him, a solitary flame against eternity's void, her bolter silent now, her faith her only weapon left. Amid the ruin, I saw her kneel beside the child of terror, the last echo of innocence in a galaxy devoured by madness. The relic's glow wavered, faint yet incorruptible, defying the darkness that sought to consume it. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe it mattered, that the Emperor's dream had not died, only changed its shape. But belief is a blade, double-edged and eager. Hope. Hope is the most dangerous weapon of all. Among the ruins, faith takes many forms. For Varnak, divinity lived not in scripture, but in circuits and steel. I watched him move between the colossal engines like a priest in a cathedral of rust. His hands trembled with devotion as he worked the ancient controls, each spark a whispered prayer to forgotten machine spirits. The air grew heavy, thick with static and sanctity, as the forges shuddered and the dead machines began to breathe again. To him, this was salvation, the Omnissiah reborn through iron. To me, it was a mirror of madness, proof that even faith, when caged in metal, hungers for worship. Then the construct's eye ignited, flooding the chamber in a blinding light that erased shadow and doubt alike. For a heartbeat, I saw beauty, pure and terrifying. And then I remembered what beauty costs in this galaxy. It costs everything. Power does not die with the Emperor. It merely shifts, searching for a new throne to kneel before. In that fractured council chamber, Kyle burned like a dying sun, his voice a mix of command and confession. Each word he spoke was wrapped in duty, yet it reeked of desperation. Around him stood admirals and schemers, loyalists and liars, all pretending the Imperium still held meaning. I watched him bargain with ghosts, invoking the names of fleets long shattered, reciting codes no one believed in anymore. His armor gleamed defiantly, catching the light like hope refusing to fade. But his eyes, they betrayed him. He was tired, not of war, of purpose itself. Men like Kyle do not fall to gunfire. They crumble under silence. And I knew when that silence came, he would choose survival over faith. And I would be there to witness and to judge. The catacombs whispered truths that surface men had buried with their shame. Bones of saints rested beside heretics, equal in decay, unequal in memory. Every step I took stirred centuries of dust and silence. The air itself pulsed, thick with corruption and remembrance. And there he was, Malkor, not hidden now, but waiting as though he belonged to the shadows more than I did. His voice slid through the dark like a blade through silk, weaving faith and blasphemy until they were indistinguishable. He spoke of the Emperor's death not as tragedy, but as freedom, a release from divine tyranny. His conviction was terrifying, pure, almost holy. The chamber breathed around us, aware, hungry. In that crimson glow, I saw not a heretic, but a reflection. What is faith when its God lies cold? I told myself the thought was poison, but poison, in the right dose, reveals truth. The ruins above the catacombs felt different. The silence wasn't absence. It was anticipation, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Through the dust and falling light, I saw the child of terror. Neither boy nor girl, not spirit nor flesh, but something in between, something enduring. I had expected horror, Instead, I found radiance. Their voice was not sound, but memory, each word a whisper of what humanity once dared to be. For a moment, the war fell away. I saw terror before the fire, cities of marble, skies alive with promise, men who dreamed beyond the stars. The child spoke then. The Emperor was not dead, only dreaming, waiting for us to remember what we were meant to become. The relic in their hand pulsed softly, like a heartbeat echoing through time. And in that light, I almost believed. Almost. But belief is a weapon, and I have learned to fear the sharpest blades of all. It was not war. It was judgment. The air itself screamed as the warp split open, bleeding light and madness. From the breach poured the damned, and at their head, Malkor, wreathed in fire, his laughter carrying like prophecy. Around him, reality burned. Saraya's voice rose above it all, a prayer shouted into oblivion, each word defying annihilation. Varnak's machines awoke in fury, their metal hearts roaring as if to challenge gods. Kale barked orders through collapsing comms, his will the last thread binding a dying fleet. And I fought. Not for faith, not for glory, but for remembrance of what humanity once was and what it still might be. As terror burned, I saw it clearly. The Emperor's dream had not died with his body. It lived in every act of defiance, in every hand that refused surrender, in every flicker of light that refused to fade. Silence. After all the screams, the fire, the hymns of war, silence. It felt foreign, fragile, as though the galaxy itself dared not breathe. I walked among the ashes of what once was terror and wondered, had the Emperor truly died, or had he simply stepped aside to let us decide our fate? The child of terror stood before me, clutching the relic like it carried the weight of every lost world. I knelt, not in faith, but in recognition. For the first time, I understood what he must have seen, a species that shatters endlessly, yet always finds a way to rise again. Saraya's prayers faded on the wind. Varnak's forges still murmured, their machines humming like forgotten hymns. And far above, Kyle's fleets blinked like dim stars in morning. Hope, fragile and bleeding, still lived. Perhaps that is immortality. Not the body, nor the throne, but the will to rebuild when nothing remains.